Hey, everybody, what's up, and welcome into another episode of the Daily DU presented by BetMGM. I am Michael Beller. We are back with the Sweet 16 coming at us this weekend. Sweet 16 games on Saturday and Sunday, Elite 8 games on Monday and Tuesday, and that means you will be back with you all the way through those Tuesday games. We got a show today, a show tomorrow, a show Monday, and a show Tuesday. I will be joined for all those shows by my trusty co-host, Brian Bennett. Brian, today we are here to set things for the Sweet 16 and look ahead from a futures point of view. We'll get into Sweet 16 game lines and everything with that tomorrow, but today we are here to set a base, set a foundation for the futures market in the Sweet 16. And I mean, this is pretty fun with what we've got left. I like the way it shook out. We've got our fair share of upset teams. Hello, Oral Roberts. Hello, Loyola. And then our fair share of chalk with teams like Gonzaga and Baylor and Alabama and Michigan. I really like the composition of the 16 teams that are left.
Should be really easy to pick this because the first couple of rounds were so predictable and just so easy to pick. And we did such a great job on that how can we possibly miss from here on?
I mean, how can we possibly miss? This is unmissable from this point forward, right? I mean, let's be honest. That's where we're sitting here, just feeling like we can't possibly do anything wrong. Joking a little bit of tongue in cheek, but we are ready to start thinking about these new updated futures that we have. Let's take this clockwise. So let's look at the West and the South region. As you look at your brackets, you can see the new updated Final Four odds for both the West and the South. Of course, Gonzaga coming in as a major favorite still in the West region. We're looking at the Zags minus 450 as the favorite here. Then we've got USC at plus 700, Oregon at plus 1,000, and then Creighton, the 5 seed here, at plus 1,400. Perhaps no surprise considering they get Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. Baylor minus 150 in the South, Arkansas plus 175, Villanova plus 600, and Oral Roberts plus 3,500. Of course, all these odds coming to us from BetMGM. Brian, let's start in that West region. I know there's a team you want to make an argument for that is not named Gonzaga. So who you got here?
Well, let's be very clear here. I'm not going to bet against Gonzaga. I'm not arguing that anyone should bet against Gonzaga, but I'm saying if you have a high tolerance of risk and you want to, put some money on a team that could give you a great return, I think Oregon might not be a bad play. And here's why. I think Oregon, they lost to USC when the one time the teams played, and Isaiah Mobley didn't play in that game. So that's the bad news. And Isaiah said on Twitter said at an interview session, I think yesterday, that Oregon stole the championship from USC. So, but you give Dana Altman a few days to prepare in that game. I kind of like where Oregon is in that one. Oregon is one of those teams that peaks in March. They play a great style of defense. And as we saw in the Iowa game, they're capable of scoring a lot too. Now, you and I could probably put together a pickup game and score probably 70 on Iowa, the way they play defense, the the other night.
I can shoot it a little bit. I can stroke it. I'm coming off a screen. I like to paint myself a young Kyle Korver.
There you go. I'm the point guard. I'm a no-shoot point guard. But, I think when you play Gonzaga, the things you need, you're going to have to play a great D. You're going to have good wings who can play defense. And then even then, Gonzaga's probably going to put up 75, even if you play a perfect game defensively. So you're going to have to be able to score a little bit. And when I look at all these teams in this region, I think Oregon is the one that could give Gonzaga some problems. They've played Gonzaga, a few times over the past few years, so they're going to understand the style a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to beat Gonzaga by any chance, but if you're looking for a big score potential, I think that's the one here in this region.
Yeah, you're totally right. When you have to score with Gonzaga, and we're going to talk with CJ Holmes about that a little bit later when we get into the Creighton and Gonzaga Sweet 16 matchup. In the South region, I think you can make an argument for Arkansas. I think Villanova and Jay Wright, they've done such a great job to get to this point. Obviously, they were comfortable favorites in both of their first and second round games, but still, to lose Colin Gillespie and to regather everything on the fly, very impressive for them to get here into the Sweet 16. I think it's going to be very tough sledding for them against a Baylor team that has definitely refound itself both offensively and defensively. No offense to Oral Roberts. I do hope that we get that Baylor-Arkansas game because I think that one could be a lot of fun. And Arkansas would seem to have some of the personnel that you need to trouble Baylor and to keep them out of the Final Four. I don't really see anything that I want to wager on here, though. I'm not paying the minus 150 for Baylor just to get to the Final Four, and I really don't feel comfortable with anyone taking them down. If you could give me Arkansas at like plus 300, if I was getting 3-1 on that, then I could see a value argument for you there. But at plus 175, it's not something I'm interested in. I'll maybe just see where the line sits if and when these teams meet in the Elite Eight.
I agree with you, and I tip my cap to the bookmakers on this one because if Arkansas had been a little higher, I might have been a little more interested, as you said. I like them against Oral Roberts. But Oral Roberts played them earlier in the year in Fayetteville, led at halftime. It's not inconceivable that Oral Roberts could win that game, but I really like Baylor. I think Baylor's a tough matchup for Villanova, just with this perimeter defense, and I really like Baylor to come out of this region. I might be willing to put some money on them, even minus 150. That's how much I like them in this region.
Yeah, definitely. I think almost as comfortable a favorite in the South as Gonzaga is in the West. Let's take a look at our two remaining regions, the Midwest and the East region. Of course, the Midwest is where everything got turned over. We've got the 2 seed here, Houston, at plus 115, but then everything else totally out the window. Number 8, Loyola, plus 170. Number 11, Syracuse, plus 500. Number 12, Oregon State, plus 700. Over in the East, you've got Michigan at 125. Alabama, 2-1 at plus 200. Florida State, plus 300, and UCLA plus 600. This one playing pretty close to script. In the Midwest, I mean, is it Houston or no one? I mean, is that really the way that you look at betting this region, or could you make an argument for Loyola with their defense, for Syracuse with the way that they're shooting the ball? Is there anyone else that interests you here?
I like Syracuse. I think
okay.
I think Syracuse is a good matchup against Houston. Houston, not a particularly big team, a team that did not play very well against zones. The little that they saw them in the AAC. And, the way Syracuse is playing right now. Now, granted, Kelvin Sampson's going to have a little bit more time to prepare than some of the teams did on the quick turnaround in the second round and first round. But, I think this is a good matchup. And if they get past Houston, then all you're saying is Syracuse has to beat Loyola Chicago or Oregon State. And for plus 500, compared to what you can get on the odds of these other teams, that would be the way I would go here.
Yeah, I mean, with the way Syracuse is shooting the ball, they're just, totally unconscious. And Buddy Boeheim playing, probably the best basketball he's played at any point during his college career. I think that is the value argument as well. If I was taking it straight, Houston I feel like they are the best team here. But obviously, they could I think if I can't remember who it was, but if that alley-oop gets thrown down by Rutgers, now we're talking about a 10-point lead. Instead, it goes back rim. Houston takes the ball down and makes a 3. And suddenly, instead of a 10-point lead, we're looking at a 5-point game with there was maybe about 3 minutes or so left in that game at that point. If that dunk goes down, we're talking about Rutgers in this spot. I don't think we're talking about Houston still being here. And then we have, probably the craziest Sweet 16 a region has ever seen if we're getting the 10-seed Rutgers in over the 2-seed Houston. That's one that I feel this is probably another stay-away region for me in terms of the Final Four odds, but I will be very interested in talking about that Syracuse and Houston game when we get to tomorrow's show, looking at the odds for this one. In the Midwest, I was talking about it last week. I felt like Michigan was a little bit, this is the East, that Michigan a little bit undervalued, that there was a little bit too much stock put into Isaiah Livers. Don't mean any disrespect, of course, to Isaiah Livers, but this is still a great team. A really impressive win over LSU to get to this point. Love them, love Alabama. I think that the chalk plays out in this region, that we are looking at a Michigan-Alabama. It should be a 2-seed, my fault there. Elite 8 game. I think that there is some value in those, even though we're just talking about plus 125 and plus 200. I think there is some value in either one of those teams, depending on which one you like, just because I really think that they can control the teams that they're going up against in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it's a tough region, I think, from a betting perspective, just because, as you said, the numbers aren't great for the top 3 teams there, and the Michigan Florida State matchup is going to be quite a battle to behold. I think with all those athletes and the differing styles of play, and then I really like Alabama against UCLA. So I'm pretty confident in Alabama getting to the Elite 8 at least. So if I were going to put any money on anybody, it'd probably be the Crimson Tide at this point. But I'm not sure the odds are great for any of these 3 teams, for enough for me to really pick one for the gambling purposes.
Alabama was my Final Four pick coming out of this region before the tournament. Nothing they did the first 2 rounds has me swayed from that, and it is feeling like a long shot that Michigan gets Isaiah Livers back at any point in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, or for that matter, even the Final Four, should they be lucky enough and good enough to advance to that point. Let's take a look at our updated national championship odds. We've got all 16 teams to look at here. Of course, no surprise that Gonzaga leads the way in this one at plus 150. Then you've got Baylor at plus 450, Michigan and Houston at plus 900, Alabama at plus 1,000. You see the rest of the teams there. I mean, I look at the first few teams, right? Gonzaga, Baylor, Michigan, Houston, and Alabama, and I could make arguments on behalf of really all of them except for Houston. I don't think Houston is going to go on a path where they, even if they get to the Final Four, take down Baylor and Gonzaga or Baylor and Michigan or Baylor and Alabama. I think that's a tough sell for them. But I think you can make strong arguments for Gonzaga, even at just 1.5 to 1 on your money, at Baylor at plus 450, Michigan at 9 to 1, Alabama at 10 to 1. Like, both of those are interesting to me. Is there anything about these national championship odds that's getting you excited?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, Gonzaga, even at plus 150, is probably pretty good odds. You're talking about a team that hasn't been beaten all year long and just looked terrific, obviously, in its first 2 NCAA tournament games. Baylor at plus 450, I think is pretty good value. There was a time in early February, late January, where I would have told you that I probably would have picked Baylor to win it all the way they were playing and their defense matching up against Gonzaga. So that's pretty good value. And as you said, if you want a little bit longer shot, Alabama at plus 1,000 is pretty darn good, pretty darn tasty there. And Michigan at plus 900, you could actually maybe bet on both those and kind of hedge your bet a little bit that one of those comes out of the East, and then you take your chances. So I'm not really seeing anybody else that I think can win 4 games in a row. Maybe we'll be surprised, but I just don't really see it.
Yeah, I really am with you there. It's just a hard sell for any of those other teams that have done a good job to get into the Sweet 16. Really quick, let's take a quick run through the most outstanding player odds that we have available to us. Of course, no surprise to see the big trio from Gonzaga leading the way: Corey Kispert at plus 450, Drew Timme at plus 600, and Jalen Suggs at plus 600. I look over into the next column, though, Brian, where we see Davion Mitchell plus 1,600, Maceo Teague plus 2,000, and Hunter Dickinson at plus 2,200. If Baylor wins the championship, it's going to be one of those two guys or Jared Butler. If Michigan wins the championship, it's almost certainly going to be Hunter Dickinson without Isaiah Livers. So I want to, I would be more interested – maybe not more interested, but if I feel like Baylor is going to win this, do I want to bet Baylor at plus 450, or do I want to take a shot on Davion Mitchell at plus 1,600, right? I mean, there are some ways to make the same bet, but find your way to better odds. And those 3 guys, Mitchell, Teague, and Dickinson, are the ones who jump out at me.
I think we're on the same page there. It'd be tough to bet one of those Gonzaga guys because you're basically almost betting against yourself in some ways, because you just don't know which one is going to have the bigger games in the Final Four. Drew Timme has been outstanding so far. Certainly wasn't that second round win. So yeah, I really like Davion Mitchell. Brian Hamilton from The Athletic wrote an outstanding piece about him just the other day. So I would read that if you're more interested in finding out more about Davion Mitchell. But I think that's a good pick. I like the Mitchell pick, especially the way he's been shooting the 3 this year. He could get super hot and just go off in a Final Four setting, and the defense he plays. I think that's a really good value right there.
Yeah, some fun things certainly to look at as we get ready for the start of the Sweet 16. Of course, if we're going to get ready for the start of the Sweet 16, we got to bring on the guy who is deep into all of these odds. That is Jason Scott, the VP of Trading at BetMGM. Jason, of course, as always, thanks so much for joining us here on today's episode of Ding You. Coming into the tournament, we know that BetMGM and probably every bookmaker out there had liabilities on Gonzaga and Michigan, Illinois too. So thumbs up to you guys for Loyola getting the victory there. Those Gonzaga and Michigan liabilities still standing. Is there any other interesting national championship action rolling in for you guys since the Sweet 16 has been set?
It's been really interesting. The people of Michigan have stopped betting. Michigan went into the tournament the best part of a $500,000 loser for us. They're now the best part of a $500,000 winner. I don't know whether it's the injury to Lively. They look fairly impressive last game to me, but we can't write their name down. Frankly, our book's very pretty. Illinois just got horrible. What we have noticed since Monday, really the only tickets we're writing are for Houston, Oral Roberts, and of course Gonzaga. So we've taken one bet this week of 100,000 to win 150,000 on Gonzaga. A couple of others of 10 and 20,000. What I think it is, a lot of people don't want to give away 13, 14 point start in a game. Prefer to take the plus 150 and sit on Gonzaga for the rest of the tournament. I think we're going to see that because they're going to be short pretty much. Certainly, they're going to be short in the Elite Eight as well. I think it'll be a double-figure handicap for sure. Probably 6 or 7 in the Final Four. Those that just want an easy victory or a softer travel, I think we're going to keep seeing one-way traffic.
Interesting. You mentioned Houston was one of the teams getting some of those bets, and we look at that Midwest region. We have a number 2, a number 8, a number 11, and number 12, just easily the craziest region of the 4 at this point. So is Houston the team seeing the most Final Four action there, or is there anyone else getting some action there?
Yeah, look, a little bit is geographical and where we're open. Houston's certainly the best. We are seeing a little bit from Syracuse. Obviously, with us being open in Jersey, that there's a few crossing the border. Oregon, Loyola, Chicago, barely any.
Yeah, Loyola is one that could be popular just in the general market, but as you say, geographics going to play a part in that. And to see them at plus 170, a lot of respect for this team. A lot of people saying coming into this, one of the most underseeded teams in the tournament. And I think the Illinois Fighting Illini would certainly agree with that, having to face that Loyola Chicago team in the second round. Let's move on into the East region. This one came pretty close to playing to script. We've got a 1 seed, a 2 seed, and a 4 seed in Michigan, Alabama, and Florida State. And then the 11 UCLA, which, really looked great in getting to this point. The comeback against Michigan State. Then they really just cruised to wins over both BYU and Abilene Christian. Is there any team jumping out here as seeing an increase in action in the futures market, or something where you've had to react to and change odds from where they opened at because of maybe something you've just seen on the court or something that you've seen in the book?
Yeah, look, Michigan has blown a little bit even since Monday. I think we went up plus 110 straight after the game. We're seeing consistent business here, not a huge number of bets, but nearly every ticket we write's for Alabama or Florida State. Slightly more to Alabama, but probably 55-40 and just a trickle for the other two. UCLA is pretty much every cent in the book for us.
Gonzaga, obviously the huge favorite, as we talked about in the West. That does mean the other 3 teams have some good odds. And we were talking earlier, I was saying that Oregon might not be a bad pick if you had a high tolerance for risk. But are you seeing any meaningful action on either USC, Oregon, or Creighton at this point?
No, I don't think any of the players' families from USC or Oregon live in states where we bet. We can't even get a trickle. We did see one bet of 120,000 to win 100 on Creighton, giving away taking the 13.5 start this week. But in terms of them progressing into the Final Four, it's chalk.
Yeah, Creighton. I mean, at least you can, right? Like we were talking about earlier, if you're going to beat Gonzaga, like you're not going to hold Gonzaga to 66 points in a game. Like you're going to have to score. We know that Creighton can shoot it with Marcus Zagorowski, with Ballack. Like that's a team that can put points on the board, and that's what you need to do to beat Gonzaga. So I can at least see the logic behind an argument for backing Creighton. Hard to imagine them getting through the Gonzaga Bulldogs here. We got one more question for you. This is actually me trying to play faux bookmaker, or I'm going to guess at something. I feel like Arkansas could be turning into a popular pick simply because of what they did over the first 2 rounds to get to this point, a game that you feel like they really have no business losing in the Sweet 16. So you can almost in your head automatically advance them to the Elite 8, and then it's just one good night away from getting into the Final Four. Is that something that is playing out in reality?
In reality, no. You mentioned before that you thought the bookmakers had done a good job on Arkansas because we kept them too short. You didn't want to back them. We've probably done a bad job. I think we've had them too short that nobody wants to back them. Again, a little bit of geography with Villanova down in PA where we're active, and it's not far from the NJ border. Very, very well backed. Oral Roberts, we haven't seen the money, but it's actually become if we talk since last Monday, it would be the largest liability we've gathered in pretty much every market it can be in. They're even taking the plus 10,000 to win the tournament. But in terms, Baylor and Arkansas, very, very quiet. This is the region where we've seen the least action.
Jason, obviously what Brian and I meant when we said that is that you're doing a very good job keeping the sharp, super intelligent college basketball brains off of Arkansas because of how interesting they could be at 3-1 odds. That's Jason Scott, the VP of trading from BetMGM. Jason, we'll be back with you tomorrow to talk the Sweet 16 game lines. But until then, have a great day, and thanks for joining us again.
Thanks then, gents.
Thanks.
All right. Of course, we here at The Athletic are partnering with BetMGM to bring you the best exclusive offer to bet alongside us and win. All you got to do, we're offering these Ding You listeners a risk-free bet up to $600. Just sign up at BetMGM.com. Use the bonus code DailyDing to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. It's for new customers. It's a risk-free first bet up to $600 at BetMGM.com with the code DailyDing. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. All right, Brian and I, as we have been all Daily Ding you long, going to be joined by a few of our colleagues here at The Athletic. First, I want to bring in Brendan Quinn. Brendan, of course, covers the state of Michigan for us. That includes the Sweet 16. I guess not bound, just in. They already have arrived at the Sweet 16. Michigan Wolverines. Brendan, thanks so much for joining us here. An impressive showing from Michigan. We didn't really expect Texas Southern to give them any trouble in the first round, and they didn't. And then that second round matchup with LSU was always going to be a tough one. It played to script. It probably would have been a tough one with Isaiah Livers. Of course, they were able to get there without Isaiah Livers. Were there any obvious adjustments you saw Michigan play with Juwan Howard made, not having Livers available? Something that's key considering we don't expect him to be available at all this weekend either.
Well, yeah, I mean, that game was so interesting in the sense that it was very matchup dependent in terms of who checks who and making adjustments as the game went on. I mean, that night did not start well for Michigan. They looked like they were in serious trouble early on. And then Shawnee Brown comes in and he helps kind of slow down Cam Thomas a little bit. They made some other adjustments. They ran Eli Brooks at the point a little bit because Mike Smith size-wise was really kind of in a bad spot against LSU. They put Hunter Dickinson on Watford, and that helped change things. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan did a really good job of making adjustments on the fly that helped kind of swing that game around. And what's interesting in the upcoming matchup with Florida State is, Florida State mirrors LSU in a lot of different ways in terms of kind of shapes and sizes of personnel. Everyone's over 6'4", athletes. They play a certain way. I would say Florida State's certainly better than LSU. I think it actually plays with defensive purpose, unlike LSU. But in terms of a situation like Mike Smith at point guard, he had troubles in ball screens against LSU's size, and you might see a lot more of that against Florida State as well. So I do wonder if you're going to see a little bit more of that Eli Brooks at point guard lineup in this game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Brendan, about that matchup with Florida State. You're right that LSU does have similar style of athletes, although Florida State much better defensively, and they seem to just have waves and waves of guys. I don't know where Leonard Hamilton finds all these guys. Right. They're like aliens out there. How long and big they are, and there's not a lot of teams like that in the Big Ten or really anywhere on planet Earth. So how does Michigan match up in this game, and how important is Hunter Dickinson?
I mean, their average height is 6'8", and that's how they beat teams, is their depth and their size. And in this case, this year, their offense is much better than usual. This is a much better shooting Florida State team than typical. Michigan, all that said, though, I do feel like Michigan's oddly a decent matchup for Florida State. It's one of the few teams that can say that. Like, not many teams have Franz Wagner. I mean, he's 6'9" and he guards guy. Basically the ideal matchup for Scotty Barnes is Franz Wagner. So how many teams have that? Not many. That's a natural matchup. Eli Brooks is a natural matchup for MJ Walker. That just works. Hunter Dickinson, I assume, unless Leonard Hamilton decides to go small, and I put small in air quotes, but not play Balsa, right? And not play the true 7-1 center to kind of go up against Dickinson. That would be the only, potential kind of not mismatch, but thing that could kind of complicate things in any way. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Florida State's going to play Balsa. I always hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's hard when you don't watch that much ACC basketball, but I'm not even attempting the last name. But, beyond that, Raekwon Gray is a very natural matchup for Brandon Johns. They do kind of oddly mirror each other a little bit. So I think it's pretty natural kind of going across, right? This guy on this guy, this guy on this guy, this guy on this guy. And then once you get into the game, ball screens go a certain way. You see how the team, Florida State's going to switch on everything. So how does Michigan handle that? We'll see. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. And, what what team starts adjusting to what the other team is doing, kind of, maybe get the other one chasing. Maybe that's the way the game goes.
When I look up and down the remaining 16 teams left and the potential matchups we could have this weekend, the one I get excited about most is Michigan and Alabama. I think that would be just a super fun game. I would love to see these two teams go at each other. I wish it could be with Isaiah Livers. I know that's not going to be the case most likely, but let's spin forward and let's say that this does happen. We can, we can forget about anything else. We're going to ask you about the Big Ten, but that feels kind of boring. So let's talk about a potential Michigan and Alabama matchup and just pretend that this does happen. What does Michigan need to do in that one to keep this Alabama offense in check?
It's kind of wild that Michigan, on the path that they've been on, Texas Southern, LSU, Florida State, it's like you're oddly playing better versions of kind of the same system and the same team. It's like free scout teams, basically, So, as you go, as you build, they're kind of seeing similar things. And with Alabama, it's certainly different than it, but in terms of, the looking to get out and score, looking to play a certain way, it does kind of fit that progression a little bit. So, in this case, I feel like Michigan can play both ways. They can go fast, they can go slow. In this one, I think if you can kind of replicate some of the troubles that that Alabama's had against slower teams, Oklahoma, Missouri, right? If you play that way and try to frustrate Alabama a little bit, I think that's what you want to do. So I would look for Michigan to really try to make it a half-court game, really try to use its possessions, make a lot of passes, try to really control the tempo of the game, frustrate Alabama in that way, just out-execute. And you got to match them on with the three ball. You got to hit shots. That's obviously harder without Isaiah Livers, but Michigan's proven that it has four shooters on the floor at any given time that are capable of burning you. And obviously Brandon Johns is a little bit of a step back. And if I'm a defense, I'm going to let him shoot all day. I'm playing way off of him. I'm going to space out my defense and let him set and sag my man off of Brandon Johns all day. Cheat on Dickinson, cheat on Franz driving the ball, make Brandon Johns beat you and make Mike Smith have to turn into a scorer, make him beat you, right? That's kind of the key to getting Michigan. So I would look for Alabama to do that. And if Michigan can hit threes and still execute with a defense playing it that way, that's kind of the recipe, I think.
Very much hope we get to see that matchup. I mean, would my bracket benefit significantly from an Alabama over Michigan Elite Eight? Yeah, of course it would. But the basketball fan in me just really wants to see those two teams go up against one another with a Final Four berth on the line. Brendan Quinn, thanks so much for joining us. We're coming back to you if Michigan does indeed get past Florida State and get onto the Elite Eight. So
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Call me up. I'll be here.
All right. That is Brendan Quinn, one of our great college basketball reporters at The Athletic. And from one to another, we bring on Matthew Gutierrez, who is covering a team that seemingly always shows up here in the Sweet 16, the Syracuse Orange. Matthew, thanks for joining us. Very happy to see that you've made it home since we last talked to you on Sunday. Let's talk about this matchup for Syracuse. Impressive, right? Impressive just getting here. The way that they that game with San Diego State was frankly never a game. Then they get past a very tough West Virginia team. Now they go up against a Houston team that was very deserving of being a 2-seed, a team that held on against Rutgers or came back to knock off Rutgers and win that game. Now we look at this matchup between Syracuse and Houston. How do the Orange keep this thing rolling?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, here we are, right? Sweet 16, Cuse is in here, and I heard the earlier part of the show where you were talking about bets. I mean, I have a few friends who graduated with Cuse with me who have put money down on Cuse going to the Final Four just because of how things have worked out. 5 years ago it happened as the 10 seed. Here they are as the 11 seed. Another stellar track record. I think they're 9-3 now as a double-digit seed in the tournament the last 3 years, and two of those losses are to ACC teams that are accustomed to the zone. North Carolina, with their two bigs, is just a perfect offense for Roy Williams for the zone, and then Duke is just being Duke in 2018 and beating Cuse. But yeah, as far as this game with Houston, I mean, Houston's an excellent team. Obviously, they have top 11 offense, top 11 defense. They really get after the offensive boards. I think they're first or second in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. So that's going to be a challenge against the zone that inherently will give up boards. West Virginia didn't shoot the ball well, under 40%, and yet West Virginia was almost won that game on Sunday, thanks in part to I think 18 or 19 offensive boards. So they're not a massive team by any stretch. I think they're certainly respectable size-wise, but they weren't like overly matching over Q. So offensive boards is going to be, in my mind, the biggest question mark here. If Q's the zone is really tightened up, it's just going to be a matter of how many second and third chances does Houston have. They really pride themselves, Kelvin Sampson's squad, on just at least 3 guys are crashing every single shot. I mean, it's sometimes 4. So they're really coming hard at you and can do that because Q doesn't normally play transition ball that much. So I think Houston's going to really try to do that. That said, Q's is, they're here for really 2 reasons. Obviously, the zone has given some fits to San Diego State, who lost against the zone. And then West Virginia had a much better approach, but just didn't really execute, committed a lot of turnovers. But, the biggest thing here is the offense. I mean, Syracuse has put up in the 70s now twice against elite defenses, and they're shooting 50% from 3. That's why they're here realistically, right? So I think for Q's at the end of the day, they are going to need to hit shots and just, Buddy's going to have to continue playing well. I don't know if he needs to score 30, but maybe 15 or 20 again. And then some of the other role guys just continuing to play as well as they have. And then you probably have a really close game here coming up on Saturday night.
Yeah, with Steph Curry hurt, I think Buddy Boeheim might be the best shooter on the planet right now. We all saw that coming a month or 2 ago for sure. Matthew, I want to ask you about another ACC school, and we talked about the Michigan-Florida State game. Let's approach this from a Florida State angle. They struggled a bit in the first round against UNC Greensboro. Looked great against Colorado. Where do you see this matchup being decided if Florida State's going to get it done?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I heard, BQ do a good job on the Michigan front. He hit on a lot of great points as far as matchups go. Florida State's got the size. They obviously play the Leonard Hamilton bench, which, the never-ending bench. And, you appreciate that when guys are just rolling out, role players. Yeah, I think, inside they have, I think it's Balsha is how you pronounce his name, the 7-footer. I think he's about 240, 245, who can match up with Hunter inside and, maybe not stop him, but just kind of limit him, disturb him a little bit inside and make Michigan just work a little bit more for shots. So I think matchup-wise, again, Florida State's in a pretty good position. They have, obviously, MJ Walker, who's just been so steady, so stellar all season long. Leonard Hamilton, for our State of the Program back in August, I spoke with him, and he just raved about MJ and his leadership, but also just his ability to involve others and be not only a scorer for them, but just distribute so well because they're a team that, they don't really ever have like 1 or 2 guys who are stars. I mean, look at the draft last year, right? I think a couple picks and one of them didn't even start. So that's their bread and butter. That's their style. I think that's going to be a by committee approach again with Michigan here in this game. And, I think it's another tight one. I think this is one that could tilt in FSU's favor, even though Michigan's had the better season and is certainly better on paper. The one thing to keep an eye on with FSU is sometimes they get turnover prone, and sometimes they're a little streaky from 3, and not to mention they have a few kind of wacky games in there. And ACC wasn't great this year, and they have some games that you just kind of scratch your head through this season, including late in the year they lost to Notre Dame. So a couple things that probably, again, tilt the scale a little bit more toward Michigan. But hey, never count out Leonard Hamilton. This is 3 straight Sweet 16s now. Hard to believe for the new bloods. They've really been recruiting really well lately. I think Brian even touched on it. They have another solid class coming in. I mean, so this is a quality club. I think FSU, they want to try to get over this hump now. They're in the Sweet 16 for the 3rd straight year. It's just kind of a matter of pushing through. But Michigan, no easy task.
Yeah, I got to imagine if you take a look at the Ken Pom fan match numbers, that Michigan, Florida State, and Oregon USC probably going to be the highest on the excitement scale for our Sweet 16 games. Just one more question for you here, Matthew, before we let you go. Obviously, we're talking about all these futures. You mentioned some of your buddies, like in Syracuse, to take it all at plus 3,000. They are also looking at plus 500 to come out of this region and make the Final Four. Can I interest you at all in a Buddy Boeheim most outstanding player at 50 to 1?
Hey, I mean, not going to put it past him at this point. If he's going to be hitting these, NBA range threes, if he's going to, he's actually scored off the bounce as well, but it's been obviously mostly threes. He was shooting, I think, 27% from three like a month ago or a month and a half ago, and now his season average is almost at 40% because he's shooting 50% lately. I mean, he's just been incredible shooting the ball. I think, as Seth Davis pointed out, he's a little one-dimensional just in that he is strictly a shooter. That said, he capitalizes on mismatches. I mean, the biggest thing with him is a lot of just high ball screens, and he gets guys to switch. Bob Huggins was kicking himself after the game Sunday and how many times West Virginia switched off a bigger defender off Buddy. They put a smaller guy. Usually it was McNeil, that West Virginia shooter is only 6'3". Buddy just will shoot over the top. So, for Kelvin Sampson, and if Syracuse wins that game, however they play the next game, got to keep an eye on that. I mean, Buddy's, he's 6'5", 6'6". He does have the high release. If you don't get out on him, I mean, he's just going to knock it down. It's plain and simple.
All right. Looking forward to those ACC teams playing in the Sweet 16 here. Matt Gutierrez, thanks again for joining us here today.
Thank you, fellas. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, Brian, let's wrap things up here. We've got one more thing we want to talk about. Obviously, we touched on this earlier in the show, but we were basically just running through all the regions, running through the Final Four odds, running through the national championship odds. Let's say that right now, oh my God, look at that. $100 just showed up on your doorstep from The Athletic, and you add that to invest in any one futures bet that is available right now. What is it and why?
Safest bet, I think, would be Baylor plus 450. Obviously, I like Gonzaga to win it all, but I'm really going to win $50. I'm not too worried about that. Whatever. So I'd want a little bit more risk and a little bit more reward. So I think Baylor, and then Alabama and Michigan, as we said, I think interesting value plays there. And then if you want to buy a new pair of shoes or something, a pair of Jordans, throw money on that Oregon to Final Four plus 1,000.
Yeah, can I take this 100 and split it up between 50 on Michigan at plus 900 to win it all and 50 on Alabama to win it all at plus 1,000? Because again, as we said, I really like those odds. Now, I always say value is one thing, but you actually have to be able to do the thing for it to matter, unless you're going to go and try and cash out a prop a round or two before it actually hits. That's easier said than done. I do think that ultimately these teams have a lot of trouble in going through Gonzaga. And, Gonzaga is the team that we thought they were all season for a reason. I might just take that 100 and then throw it into something that I've got in my own pocket, because Gonzaga is just the best team in the country, and they have been all season. I think there's plenty of value in Michigan at plus 900, in Alabama at plus 1,000, even in Baylor at plus 450. But really, no one has come close to stopping this Gonzaga offense, and I don't think we're going to see it at all. So I still, even though just the plus 150, it still feels like it's not accounting for just how much better this Gonzaga team is than the rest of the field. So I will go ahead and take that 100, try to turn it into $150 on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Hopefully you turn this 40 minutes into something that's going to help you as you are getting ready for the Sweet 16. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're doing it live, watching this after the fact, or listening to the podcast on Ding You. Brian and I will be back with you again tomorrow. That will be a show where we talk about the Sweet 16 individual matchups, digging into the lines and the totals. So we hope to see you then. For Brian Bennett, for Jason Scott, for Matthew Gutierrez, and Brendan Quinn, I am Michael Beller. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.